What if Yuji never existed? What if everything that Yuji Itadori went through never actually happened in the story of Jujutsu Kaisen? And what if instead of Yuji being the main character, what would actually happen if the story was to change and it was Yuta in his place instead? Here's the scenario. Yuji Itadori never finds the first finger of Sukuna, and instead, after his grandpa passing, he goes on and confesses his feelings to his mutual crush, Yuko Ozawa, and continues his life without Sukuna in it. He lives blissfully unaware of the world of Jujutsu sorcery, and he gets his happy ending we all kind of want for our boy Yuji. Everything else in the world stays the same, except these facts. Yuji never eats Sukuna's finger, and thus never enters the world of Jujutsu sorcery. Yuta comes back early from his trip to Africa and returns just after Megumi is sent on his mission to Yuji's high school to retrieve the finger. But during this mission, Megumi, in a random moment of madness and desperation, trying to gain a higher form of strength to beat the cursed spirit that is rampaging around, he wages everything on eating the finger of Sukuna and giving himself a power boost that could save himself from summoning the Maharaga and potentially dying to that instead. However, this severely backfires, and he underestimates completely the raw power of Sukuna's soul and instead is taken over completely by Sukuna. From this moment on, everything else in the world changes. Yuta has just come back from his trip to Africa and is with Gojo, and they feel the presence of Sukuna becoming active and moving about. And they rush to go and investigate, knowing that Megumi was around that area. However, by the time they arrive, they find the school utterly destroyed, and Megumi is nowhere to be found. Sukuna, with his now new body and power, seeks out an old friend in Kenjaku, who is currently plotting to have Gojo sealed in the Shibuya incident that is yet to happen with the disaster cases. Sukuna arrives and greets Kenjaku and takes over his plans completely, and Kenjaku, being the curious and mad scientist dude that he is, gets extremely excited about seeing Sukuna alive, present, and along with the disaster cases who have wanted nothing but to bring Sukuna back, all he can do is proceed to sit back and watch this chaos unfold and let Sukuna do his thing. And now that Sukuna is free and walking about, Gojo and Yuta go back and they alert the higher-ups and Jujutsu Society of the current situation, who opt to put all of our students and teachers at Jujutsu High on high alert and try to have everyone gather at the Tokyo school where the fingers are currently being kept, just in time for the Goodwill event. Sukuna, meanwhile, has made absolutely quick and short work of getting around the place and collecting some of his fingers from the cursed worms as well as finger bearers, and he realizes that the remaining fingers are now within the Tokyo branch of Jujutsu High. And during the Goodwill event between the Kyoto and Tokyo schools, Sukuna goes to interrupt it, and while Yuta are there in their events, we'll see that they are intercepted by Sukuna instead of Hanami this time around. And this is where the first fight breaks out. At this point in time, Sukuna has managed to claim around 5 fingers, give or take, and has come to Jujutsu High to have some fun and test out his new 10 Shadows technique, as well as claiming the rest of the fingers that are sat within the Tokyo branch of the school. Mahito, Jogo, Hanami, Kenjaku, as well as Uraumi are all present, but they were told strictly by Sukuna not to interfere, as he wants to test out his body on some fresh meat, as he calls it. And the fight breaks out between Sukuna, Yuta, Maki, Todo, and Inomaki, who are all in an incredibly dangerous situation and slightly confused, having seen Megumi, who the last they heard was just on a mission. With Panda, Mekamaru, Nobara, Noritoshi, Miwa, Mai, and Momo sensing the battle kicking off, they rush towards everything to try and help out as best they can. It's at this point that Mahito gets bored, and being his usual mischievous self, he decides to disobey Sukuna's orders, and he helps get involved within this battle, much to Uraumi's dismay, but Kenjaku just seemingly laughs it off. Again, he's just curious to see these events that he cannot control unfold. He wants to see what happens in this alternate timeline, and he just laughs and says how it cannot be helped. Mahito comes face to face with our second group here and starts fighting, immediately taking out both Momo and Mai. I'm sorry to the Momo and Mai fans here. Switching back over to Yuta, Maki, Todo, and Inomaki, it's revealed that Inomaki has already worn out. Using his clear speech to keep on retaining Sukuna's 10 shadow techniques, Inomaki uses the last of his energy to tell Sukuna to get crushed. However, Sukuna simply sinks into the abyss of the 10 shadows and appears behind Inomaki, and this time taking his head instead of his arm, leaving Yuta, Maki, and Todo left to deal with the monster that is stood in front of them. And sensing something is wrong, Gojo and the other teachers rush to the battlefield, but unfortunately for them, Kenjaku is on duty of the barriers, and as someone who is only second to Tengen in barriers, he has constructed a barrier that will stop Gojo and the teachers in their tracks. And while Gojo and the gang try and figure out a way to break in, we switch back to Sukuna, who is currently being pressured by the Boogie Woogie combo of both Todo and Maki, while Yuta and a semi-manifested Rika try to provide as much backup and long-range support as they possibly can, but unfortunately being more experienced in hand-to-hand combat against Maki, Sukuna quickly realizes the trick that is behind Boogie Woogie and figures out the timing, and as soon as Maki switches, he takes her out completely. Shortly after this, he cuts away Todo's hand, figuring out that the clap is needed for the switch to happen, and launches Todo away, seemingly knocking him out of the fight permanently, leaving only Yuta and Rika against Sukuna. And at this point, Rika's gears ratcheted up a notch after seeing Yuta in distress, having witnessed all of his friends being annihilated, killed, or hurt against the King of Cases in Megumi's body. We then switch back to Mahito and we see him fighting against Panda, Mekamaru, Nobara, Noritoshi, and Miwe, who was unfortunately transfigured after now trying to get in close to slash Mahito, and is now fighting under the control of Mahito while being transfigured, leaving only Panda, Mekamaru, Nobara, and Noritoshi. And Mahito realizes that he can't transfigure Mekamaru due to him being a robot, but senses that there is another weakness to him and looks directly at Miwe. He decides to leave the transfigured Miwe to fight against Mekamaru. Seeing Mekamaru's reaction of pure pain and emotion, he senses a connection between these two, and he realizes that he could further break down Mekamaru's will to fight by having him fight Miwe and trying to kill him with her. Mahito now stands against Nobara, Noritoshi, and Panda alone. Switching back over to Kenjaku, Uraumi, Hanami, and Jogo, we see Jogo and Hanami laughing at Mahito's childishness for having disobeyed Sukuna's orders here, and Kenjaku mentions how it's only a matter of time before Gojo and the others break in, and says things are going to start getting a little bit more complicated soon. Meanwhile, outside of the barrier, Gojo has finally figured a way to destroy it and get inside, allowing him, Nanami, Yaga, Gakuganji, and Utahime to go in and assist the other students. Gojo and Gakuganji go to Sukuna and Yuta, while Yaga and the rest head towards Mahito, and while Kenjaku and the rest of the disaster cases plus Uraumi watch from afar as the situation completely unfolds. Yaga and his team arrive on the battlefield to find Panda having had all of his soul cores destroyed, thus being annihilated. Mekamaru is still fighting against the transfigured Miwe, unable to bring himself to kill his former friend, and Nobara has sustained serious injuries, and Noritoshi is the only one alive, only minutes away from being killed by Mahito until Nanami and Yaga step in. Mahito laughs about how serious this is goal getting and says in his head how he should go back to Sukuna before he finds out, swiftly leaving the battlefield and returning to Kenjaku and the others, who mention Sukuna is still fighting. Switching back over to Sukuna, who's now engaged in a fight with Gojo and Yuta, with Rika, who has now been fully manifested. However, both Yuta and Rika are reaching their 5-minute limit. Gojo mentions how Megumi has changed, and Sukuna proposes, maybe we postpone this fight and have a good old-fashioned war. I feel like this could be more fun, like how they did it in the Heian era. If Gojo and his team win, Sukuna will give up Megumi's body and leave. Gojo smiles and says he will definitely win, with Yuta staring down Sukuna with rage in his eyes after witnessing him hurting and killing his friends. They agree to meet in Shibuya on October 31st, and both groups separate and recoup and prepare for their final battle in Shibuya. Yuta, mourning the loss of Maki, someone who he deeply looked up to, he swears revenge against Sukuna, and while the rest of the gang heal up and recover, Gojo starts to plan the Megumi recovery mission against Sukuna, still yet unaware of Kenjaku having taken over Geto's body, who is yet to reveal himself to him, who we will surely find out about when we get to Shibuya. But the rest you'll have to wait for in part 2. I will say this has been a video idea that has been on my mind for a little while now, and it is ridiculously fun to theorize what actually happens when you switch out or replace certain characters in the series. So in this little alternate timeline that I've created here, you'll have to let me know what you think about it in the comments down below, and tell me who you would change, what you think would happen in this scenario narratively, and tell me how you think the series would go and what changes you'd make. And as always, if you haven't, make sure to like the video and subscribe, and as always, I will catch you guys all in the next one. Much love, big kisses, peace.